Hey y'all, I'm so glad you guys are back for this week's Coffee Chats with Kat. My really good friend Laura of Paper and Honey is here. We're talking about something this week that isn't talked about that often in the small biz sphere, and it's a little bit more of a sensitive topic. So first of all, I'm just really grateful, Laura, that you are willing to open up and talk about this. For anybody who is watching, we're going to link things in the description that we talk about. We also, I know both of us would love to connect with you, so feel free to comment, reach out to Laura as we kind of dive in. So today we're talking about what it looks like to run a business when you have ADHD. And again, I know this is not something that's typically talked about a lot when we own our own business, but it's very real. And I just appreciate Laura's willingness to share her story and talk with us about what that has looked like for her. So Laura, would you mind just introducing yourself a little bit more? Talk about Paper and Honey. I love Paper and Honey. So talk about that some, talk about just your story with what life looks like right now.
Oh, well, right now life looks a lot different than it usually does. We're recording from quarantine, or at least I am. But yes, I'm Laura. I'm the owner of Paper and Honey. We are an heirloom wedding stationery and letterpress print studio located in Michigan. We create meaningful paper for meaningful marriages, and some of my favorite things as far as design in my company, they include unique storytelling. I love to really play with interesting materials and textures and color palettes, and I really love vintage inspired design and illustration. And yes, I have ADHD.
I don't want you to feel awkward.
No, I don't at all. I never do this kind of thing, and it's hard to, let me just launch into my story about having a mental disorder. But it's funny, I don't feel super sensitive talking about it, just because I think it's pretty interesting, and I also think that a lot of people might have it and have no idea, especially in our our specific circle of female-driven creative entrepreneurs. I know that people with ADHD, I can't think of the exact statistic, but we are very likely to start our own businesses based on our creativity and curiosity and drive. But also ADHD often presents so differently in women and little girls that it can be vastly underdiagnosed. Because ADHD stands for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, but there's 3 different types of ADHD. Okay. And so even though the hyperactivity is within that name of the umbrella of ADHD, you don't necessarily have to have that hyperactivity aspect. So for me in particular, I have the inattentive type. So that means I'm a total daydreamer. I have so much trouble focusing. I have a lot of brain fog, but sort of the picture of ADHD is like the little boy bouncing off the walls. And so as a little girl, when I was just staring out the window and my 3rd grade teacher told my parents that she thought that I had ADHD, they said no, because I was smart and I was pretty calm, but it was that I couldn't really pay attention at all.
That's so interesting. I didn't even realize that there were 3 different types. Mm-hmm. And you're right, the stereotype is the little kid that's just running around kind of crazy, all over the place, and you can't simmer them down at all.
Yeah.
Versus what you're talking about with someone who on the outside looks calm, but their mind isn't as focused as their body might show that it is.
Yeah, it's for me, it's an internal restlessness all the time.
Okay.
So I remember, it's so interesting because I wasn't diagnosed until 3 years ago. And since then, it's just been complete, mind opening. I can't believe, I don't know, just everything now makes sense. It's I found this tome, and it has all my brain secrets in it. And I opened it up and angels sang, and everything finally made sense. And I didn't feel, I didn't feel like I had this moral failing anymore of just why can't I get all these things done? Why is this so hard for me? And especially, you know, you and I have been friends for 6 years.
Years, I know.
Oh my gosh. Oh my
So
goodness.
long.
That's insane.
Long.
Um, and so I remember, you and I, we met in 2014 and we were starting our companies at the same time.
Mhm.
And being friends with you then and kind of like starting on like the same level. I remember watching you, and this isn't to like make you feel any kind of way, just like you were my company, like my people. And so obviously I had, I was like watching you and following you along, and I was just watching you launch like company after company and like all these things. And it just felt like, look at Kat doing things that she says she's going to do. Like, how does she have an idea and make it happen? Like, I couldn't wrap my head around that because I felt like I couldn't put the pieces together. And back then, I didn't know I had ADHD. So I internalized all these things and I was like, well, I must be lazy, or I must not be smart enough, or I must not have the drive, or all of these things that, like, oh, it must just be that I'm not good enough, that I can't do these things. Because, like, look at all my friends who we started off at the same level and how are they doing this? And it looks so easy. And it's just like, launch after launch and success after success. And it wasn't that I like felt, like it's not like I put that on you at all, or, Bonnie Bakhtiari or other friends or really anyone, but it was fully just me feeling like this is a moral failing for myself. So once I was diagnosed, it just felt like such like an answered prayer of just, wow, like this is it. This is the thing that I can pinpoint and identify and now learn how my brain works and be able to take the steps to accommodate that. And it's just been so nuts, really. But
What,
so I'm so grateful for it.
like, what helped you, like, I don't want to say, be diagnosed, or I don't know if that's like the right term, but I guess
Mhm.
what was like the point for you? Because it sounds like there was a lot of just like mental and emotional stress for you, like beforehand, like that, like comparison and almost like bullying yourself in a sense
Yeah,
of why am I this way? So
yeah,
what
totally.
allowed you to like free yourself, for lack of a better way to say that, and say like, okay, no, this can't be right. I need to seek help and see if there is something, with this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was just running a business and finally getting fed up with how I felt all the time. And I had suspected since college that I had ADHD because, I'd always gotten great grades, but it felt like pulling teeth. Like it felt so difficult for me to write a paper. Like I have this visceral memory of being in an art history class and I had to write a 2-page paper. Like that's it, 2 pages. And I'm a great writer, if I say so myself, but it takes me forever to structure my thoughts and get them down in a way that makes sense. So like once they're down, it's great, but it feels impossible and everything feels like I have 100 thoughts all at once. And it's physically impossible for me to pinpoint the one that I need to do. So when it came to my business, obviously running your business, you wear every single hat.
Yep.
There are 1,000 different tasks to do. And especially if you're, launching a big project or, working on something that is going to take some time to flesh out and build out, and you need to plan for it and organize and prioritize. I felt like I was constantly failing over and over and over when it was like, okay, I have this one revenue stream solidified. My wedding clients, my wedding stationery process, I have got that down. Great. Like let's launch this other thing, or let's explore what this would look like, or even something as simple as I want a new website. What's that going to look like? To plan it out and map it out and write all the copy and do all these things on top of your day-to-day tasks.
Yeah.
So I got fed up with just feeling like I was failing constantly and knowing that I am smart and I am capable and I've done this before and this should not be as hard as it is. Like, why is this so hard? And I think being in our like kind of creative sphere encouraged me because I saw people like you where I was just like, Kat's doing so much. Like, I want to be able to do that too. And just sort of feeling like I have so much potential and this huge life ahead of me, and like time is passing by. And, feeling frustrated and just depressed over yourself every day is like no way to live. And I just didn't, yeah.
Right.
And even broaching the subject with Max, or my doctor, when I remember I first approached him and asked, like, hey, I think I have ADHD and I really want to be tested for it. Like, I'm at this point where I need to be serious about taking that next step and like talking to my doctor. And even telling him that, I was crying because I felt like no one was going to believe me, because it's such an invisible disorder. And all the markers of it, which are like forgetfulness, procrastination, it's hard to be motivated. Everyone has those things. And so it's very easy for anyone to be like, oh, well, I lose my keys every now and then.
Yeah.
Or, like, oh, I'm kind of spacey today. Like, I have ADHD. And it's like, no, I truly don't get it. And that's one of my pet peeves, but that's like a whole other coffee chat. But I was so afraid that my doctor would look at me and be like, oh, you just want, you want to take the easy way out, and like, you just want drugs, or like, you just want medication. And I was so fearful, and that's, a whole other thing. But yeah, I just was sick of feeling so awful every day. And just like I was wasting my life, honestly, that is what it felt like, where it's just like, I have so many great ideas and I don't have the tools to make them happen. And I need to figure that out.
Well, I think it's awesome, Laura, that you were able to advocate for yourself. Like, you were able to say, listen, like, this doesn't feel right. Like, this can't be the only way. Let's do something about it. And obviously, like, you were right. Like, your gut instinct, like, you knew, and you were correct. And that was 3 years ago. And now, like, it's had a awesome, like, enlightening experience for it. I know we've talked about this before, which is why I was like, we should talk about this on YouTube for more people to like hear, because you're right. I think that there are more people who either have it and don't know it, or B, we like make those little side jokes about like, oh, it's just, I have ADHD, and that's not healthy, and that's not helpful either for people that do have it. So just to kind of give everybody a little bit more knowledge around it. So what are some things I would love to hear, like in the last 3 years specifically, since you found out that since you were diagnosed with it and have now been actively like realizing that you have it, and knowing that you're working and running a very successful business. And
thank you.
It is though. And like, just doing so much with the business with having ADHD, like, do you have specific tips or things that business owners can be aware of or think through when balancing those two?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, before I do that, I want to clarify that, I think a common myth with ADHD is that people who have it can't pay attention, which isn't true. And it's not that, it's that we can't regulate our attention. So for me, it feels impossible I can't easily at all switch tasks. So if I'm doing one thing and a notification pops up, I cannot read that and then still maintain this attention over here and be able to switch easily. And some other things of how it manifests is just procrastination, my perfectionism, where it's just like every detail is the most important detail, and I cannot figure out what should stay and what should go. I have a ton of trouble with multitasking. My memory is terrible. So it's sort of just like laying the groundwork of the issues before I go into sort of like how, it helps me. I read this metaphor once that was, the ADHD is like having 5 jigsaw puzzles in one box, and they're all mixed up and there's no pictures. So it's just like you have all these pieces and you have no idea how they fit together, where to start. It's just a lot. And it gets very overwhelming and just emotionally exhausting. So a lot of times at the end of the day, I just spent so much energy and time figuring out what to do that I did one thing, and then like, oh, well, now it's time for bed because I exerted all my energy on this instead of actually doing tangible tasks that kind of move the needle.
Yeah.
So as far as some strategies that have helped me, I think that it's really important, first and foremost, to sort of really get in tune with yourself and identify how specifically it manifests in you. So, like I said earlier, how there's sort of these three different types of ADHD. I can really only speak for my type, which is just inattentive or like combination. There's basically hyperactive, inattentive, and then a combination of the two. So I'm either inattentive or like a little combination. But what works for me first and foremost is one, getting a medical diagnosis, going to see an actual psychiatrist and taking the test and getting that validation. One, so that, you know, you can take that and go to your doctor. And if you choose to try medication, you know, all of that is legit and kind of in line. But also, it's so easy to kind of take an online test and say, you know, kind of fit yourself into that. But then after that, just sort of day-to-day life, I swear by therapy weekly as well as medication. And it took a while for me to find the medication that works for me, like that works the best for me. But now that I'm on it and it quiets everything and I'm able to focus, and it is truly wild to think that this is how everyone else's brain works all the time. It's insane. It felt like I had 100 TVs on, and then I take my medication and all of the 99 turn off, and I'm able to choose which. It's insane. Yeah, it's like, you know, and there's sort of a lot of, I don't want to say controversy around this type of medication. You know, people think that it's overprescribed in kids, and I can't really speak to that because I was diagnosed at 27. But medication is kind of like wearing glasses. Like it just really helps you focus and sort of see everything more clearly and be able to identify and prioritize and all of these things. So beyond that, I also take a ton of notes, and I sort of over organize and over what you and I were just emailing about this. What did you call it? I'm very thorough. Yes. Because I have to be.
Yes.
Because if I'm not able to see things organized and structured in front of me, in my head, they're all the same. They're all leveled out, and I can't see it. And so for me, I take a ton of notes. I'm very highly organized. I have like an online system for all of my projects. You know, my email is really organized because that's the only way that I'm able to really do the things that need to get done and be a good business owner, really, and not let things fall to the wayside.
And what we were saying via email, so Laura and I work together a good bit because she does all of the graphics and design work for Creative at Heart, so for our membership community and our conference. So we talk all the time. We talk a lot. And for me, though, with you, Laura, like I think I told you this via email, like I just am like, Laura's just organized, like Laura's so thorough, like the things that you do because you truly have to run a business with ADHD, in my mind, are just really awesome qualities of Laura, you know? So I'm not like, oh, someone's organized, like that's a crutch, you know? It's like, man, you're so organized, like you're so thorough, like that's just a really great quality, and that detail oriented aspect like of yourself. So it was really fascinating for me when you were saying like, but I have to do that because of how my brain works in terms of the ADHD, which we would consider to be a crutch, right? Which we would consider to be something that is like subpar. So I don't know. I think that's so fascinating.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
For me, it's like the silver lining, right? It's like taking something that it could be very negative, right? And has made certain aspects of your life very difficult. But here's like really awesome positives that have come because of that aspect of you.
Well, thanks. And it's super interesting too, because even just like taking some notes for this call, because I have to like actually say anything of substance and not go on a tangent. But something that I've sort of learned is that I need to be very vocal about what I need and what works for my brain, and about how, like, sort of what you can expect. So Kat, like working with you as a designer, I remember in Trello, I asked you like, hey, can we make checklists? Can we have some sort of like template of a checklist? Because having things to check off, that's how I know that I completed everything and I'm not missing anything. And I know that I am serving you well and giving you everything that you need, so that you're not sort of like left wanting because I can't hold all of these tasks in my head at the same time. So even things like, you know, I'm my email is like my inbox is like my centralized work communication thing. So if I have a wedding planner texting me, I'll often, say like, hey, this sounds great, but can you please email me? Because if it's in my texts or my voicemails, it might as well not exist, because I can't regulate checking all of these different media like so often. And so just sort of clarifying, these are the things that work best for me, and being vocal about it with the people that you work with or the people who you work for, really. It's sort of just like a help me help you. And granted, I can't make everything sort of fit into my boxes, but I can try.
Right, right. No, I think that that's like a really practical thing that you do, and that somebody else, who's listening, who feels like they relate to this, can, start to implement some of those things like into their own business, which I think is helpful, and that's what we want. Would you mind, we'll wrap up here in a minute, but I'd love to know, and even just like hear your thoughts on ADHD in our industry. I know you mentioned in the beginning, like, I don't really feel like it's a sensitive topic. Like, it's a part of me and I want to talk about it. Like, what are some things that we can do as other business owners, whether if we don't have ADHD, to either talk about it more or be more sensitive to it, or normalize it in a sense, so that it doesn't feel like, oh, I have ADHD. Like, it doesn't feel like a crutch or feel like a negative in any capacity.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a great question. I haven't really thought about how other people can like talk about it more. And I suppose for me, I don't feel like people need to be talking about it more. Yeah, I think as far as like sensitivity, my main thing is just, I can't stand when I am expressing something to someone and I'm saying, oh, like, I'm so sorry, like, I'm so foggy today, or like, I really can't connect these dots, or I'm having a hard time, or like, I need to get you that email, like, I'm so sorry, like, my time management has been way off. And they kind of just respond with like, oh, like, everyone has ADHD, or like, oh, I'm really ADHD today too. And it's kind of like when people say like, oh, I'm so OCD. And it's like, no, but people who have OCD, it's like a really debilitating, awful thing. And it just kind of like trivializing that. Just for me, it doesn't feel great to hear. And it's not that I get like so offended. It's just like a minor annoyance where I'm just like, oh, but like, you actually have no idea how much of a daily struggle this is. And like, I have cried, like, and I have, internalized this so deeply. And I think that I've done the work now to know that, it is sort of a superpower in a way, where I know that it's the source of my creativity and like my crazy ideas and my humor and the way I story tell. And my hyper focus is insane, like when that kicks in. And I think I remember telling you a couple of years ago when I rebuilt my website, I worked on it for like 8 months. And then one day, taking that copywriting course, I sat down and wrote and designed the whole thing in 48 hours. Like, that's insane. But as far as people, online and sort of like our creative circle, I think I would just love it to be the awareness to go up a little bit, especially because I think that so many people, especially in our, creative sphere, have it and might not have any idea. And so when you ask this question, my heart just kind of really goes out to all of those women and men who are struggling in these ways and just think it's their own fault, or think that, oh, if only I try harder, like one day I'll get it. And it's like, you can try as hard as you want, but your brain biology is your brain biology.
Right.
And what can we do to elevate you and empower you to use that as a tool and not something that you feel is, a horrible disability or something like that.
Laura, that's beautiful. I like want to write that down as like a quotable from this.
Oh,
No, it's so things that there's definitely mindset things that those of us that don't have ADHD can do just to be more self-aware of the way that we use the term ADHD or OCD or really any sort of mental disorder.
Right.
We almost try to make it too normalized. Like we try to make it like the joke. And like that's
it's like a quirk. Like I'm so quirky. Like
that's not helpful because you really do have it. And it is something that keeps you up at night or stresses you out or it hits you. And then but then also on the flip side, people who creatives in this industry who, like you said, are maybe feeling some of these things that you dealt with before being diagnosed can hopefully feel more empowered to seek out a psychologist, seek out their doctor, like really try to figure out like what is this and not just bully themselves and feel so down on themselves about it.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. I think just self-awareness is huge. And then from that point, you're able to figure out your own idiosyncrasies and the things, that you deal with or the things that empower you. Like for me, it's my creativity. Like I love that I have that and I can identify that as a strength because I have ADHD. And now it's just sort of figuring out all of those processes and like how can I support myself in ways that work for my brain and not necessarily, like the newest coaching package that someone is selling that it's shiny and new and I want that. But I now know that, okay, well, maybe that doesn't work for me. Like this style of business growth or this strategy, I've gone through all of these things and it hasn't worked. And now I know that it's because of my brain and it's not necessarily anyone's fault. But it feels empowering to know that like, okay, well, I just need to figure out what works for me. And if it looks different than what everyone else online is doing, that's okay because their brains are different than mine.
Yeah, I love that, Laura. I love that. This has been so good. Seriously, like so. And we've talked about this before, but just we haven't talked specifically about some of these things. So I'm just really grateful that you shared this. Where can people connect with you? Because I definitely want them to be able to connect with you. I'm sure I don't want to speak for you in saying that like they should DM you if they want to talk more, but I feel like you would love that.
Yeah.
If I'm wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram at Paper and Honey. Paper and Honey. I think I said that too fast. And please DM me if you want. I can't guarantee that I will get back to you in a timely manner because of the way my brain works. But you can also find me at paperandhoney.com.
I love it. Awesome. Thank you again, Laura. Guys, we'll link things below for you. I'll link Laura's Instagram and her website too, so you guys can connect with her more there. And thanks for tuning in to this week's episode.